Hi again, everybody, and welcome to Bengals Breakdown here on Bengals.com. I'm Dan Hoard. He is Bengals.com editor Geoff Butch Hobson. This week, it's Monday Night Football as the Bengals take on the Pittsburgh Steelers for the 100th time. And it'll be the first time in exactly 15 years and 10 months since the Bengals faced the Steelers with somebody other than Ben Roethlisberger at quarterback. It's interesting because over the first 15 years of his career, he's missed a lot of games. He's missed 25 games, but it never timed out that he missed a Cincinnati game. And that's unfortunate because he's 25-7 against the Bengals in his career. But that's not going to be the only change on the two rosters and the two coaching staffs going into this game.
No question, Ben defined the rivalry. But, you know, I go back a little bit later than that. I go back to 2015, and I think people would argue that this Bengals team is still kind of hung over from that wild card loss that they seemingly had won, but was fumbled away when Jeremy Hill lost the ball. And you look back at that game, that can no longer be, you know, that hangover is starting to clear up a little bit. There's going to be two starters on offense for the Bengals are left from that team. Andy Dalton and Tyler Eifert. Eifert might not even start, so you're going to have one starter out there on offense. And on defense, I believe it's four starters were left from that game. Sean Williams, Drake Kirkpatrick, Gino, and Carlos. So, and then you got a new coaching staff that really could care less about 2003, never mind 2015. Zach Taylor is, you know, how old was Zach in, 2003? You know, not very old.
So, 21.
Yeah, he was. So it's clearly it was already a new era in this thing with Zach coming in, but now with Ben out, you certainly have a glimpse into the roaring 20s.
Let's get back to the quarterback situation for the Steelers with Roethlisberger out. Second-year pro Mason Rudolph takes over, and there's kind of an interesting storyline there because in Pittsburgh, they played up the fact that last year in the third round of the draft, the Steelers traded up to move up 3 spots to get ahead of Cincinnati and draft Rudolph because apparently Pittsburgh thought that the Bengals were interested. Cincinnati wound up with Sam Hubbard, so the Bengals certainly aren't complaining. But in any case, the Steelers thought very highly of this guy, and they're hoping that he can be Ben's successor.
I mean, apparently Zach thinks highly of him too. He was, he scouts quarterbacks. He said he wouldn't. He said the other day he wouldn't have been surprised if somebody had taken Rudolph in the first round. And the Steelers seem to they still seem to be jumpy about the 2016 draft when they were enraged in Pittsburgh that the Bengals got Will Jackson right before them, and they ended up drafting Addy Burns after that. And people in Pittsburgh were really grinding about that, and then in the last 2 drafts, they've jumped up ahead of the Bengals, supposedly for players they thought they would get. Last year it was Rudolph, this year it was Devin Bush. So that's kind of an interesting fling to it. But, it's funny, we were talking about how Ben defined the rivalry. I always thought the difference between the Bengals and the Steelers in the Marvin era was that the Steelers said, we're going to run the ball, and the Bengals said, we'd like to run the ball. And the guy who defined that for the Steelers was Mike Munchak, the offensive line coach. And, you can talk about losing Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown and Ben. To me, I think the biggest loss is Mike Munchak because he got this offense back on the rails after Ben got killed in the Bruce Arians era, just got murdered. And Munchak got him back. He got him back into the playoffs, and it was that running game. And now with Munchak gone and Le'Veon's not there, they're having the same conversations in Pittsburgh that the people in Cincinnati are, hey, we got to run the ball. So it's kind of going to be an interesting dynamic down there with, who will be able to run it first.
Let's talk about the Bengals roster and the injury situation for Cincinnati. When A.J. Green got hurt, the original hope, best case scenario, was maybe he's back in time for Week 4 Monday night in Pittsburgh. He's not even practicing yet, so that's not going to happen. Additionally, Darius Phillips, who was great last week, had his first regular season interception and a 92-yard kickoff return touchdown that should have counted if not for a dubious holding call on Auden Tate. Now we learn that he suffered a left knee injury, and he's going on the injured list.
Yeah, the only sign of hope there is they got a shot. They could bring him back. They could off IR recall, but now you got 2 corners that weren't here. 5 days. They weren't here 3 days ago. So who's going to be active? And if they're active, What are they going to be able to contribute? So that's something you're going to have to look at. How will the Steelers take advantage of that? And you know, it's too bad because Zach had said, you know, after 2 pretty tumultuous weeks on the injury front, he thought they came out of Buffalo without any significant injuries. Then you find out about Phillips. You still don't have Cordy Glenn, your left tackle. Obviously, you don't have AJ. Sam Hubbard's a little dinged up, but he's obviously ready to go. But you know, still this team still has to prove they can win without AJ. It hasn't done it. You know, and they've played 2 one-play games really. You know, they lost in Seattle and in Buffalo. You got to believe that he would have been a factor in one or maybe both. So, you know, that's the other interesting dynamic is you get this young crew of receivers down there in Pittsburgh, and led by the Pittsburgh guy. I wouldn't be surprised to see Tyler Boyd. He really does. Tyler Boyd has a knack for the kind of, he's a knack for the third down. He also has a little knack for the dramatic play, as we saw in Baltimore. Monday night in his hometown, Tyler Boyd, keep an eye on him.
That would be nice. Greg Maben and Torrey McTyer, by the way, are the 2 new cornerbacks for the Bengals. They've got a few days to at least get to know their teammates. It's the Bengals and Steelers on Monday night at Heinz Field. Should be interesting as the 2 teams go at it for the 100th time. For Geoff Hobson and our crew, I'm Dan Hoard. Thanks for checking out Bengals Breakdown here on Bengals.com.